Hi, I'm Dr. Tiffany Shelton. I'm an audiologist and a professor, an assistant clinical professor here at Utah State University. I work in the adult clinic, the hearing and balance clinic that we have here on campus in the Sorenson Center for Clinical Excellence. And I work with graduate students, and I also teach some courses, and been working here for probably 15 years now.
What products are available?
Okay, well, we start with PSAPs versus what they're called Personal Sound Amplification Products. I don't have an example of it here, but you can buy them anywhere. They're at Walmart, they're online, and they should be marked as PSAPs. And they're just a little device to help amplify things. If you're having a hard time hearing something, it just boosts it up. But it's not for people with a hearing loss. It's for people that want to hear the birds a little bit better when they're going bird watching, or want to hear the rustle of the leaves when they're hunting, but definitely not for people that have hearing loss. Sometimes people buy them when they shouldn't, because it's very confusing, because there's so much out there and it's hard to know what's best for you. The next thing is the over-the-counter devices, which here's a couple examples of these. There are, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about this in a little bit, but they're all different kinds. More and more keep coming out on the market. It's kind of exciting to see what people are inventing. They do have bonuses, but they also have limitations. They're the next one up. They're for people with mild to moderate hearing loss, perceived. They do give you a better boost, and they have more control. They're FDA regulated, so they're better than PSAPs. And they should be marked on the box as an over-the-counter device. So the new law has required that you can't put it as an over-the-counter unless it meets certain specifications. So you know, hopefully, if everything's being legal, it's the right thing for you if that's what type of hearing loss you have. And then over here, we have a few varied devices of different kind of prescriptive hearing devices, or hearing aids. And they're all different sizes and all different kinds. It depends on the person, their lifestyle, and their hearing loss to determine what would be the best type of device for them, whether it would be prescriptive or over-the-counter, or what kind of prescriptive hearing aid to choose from. And they are much more advanced than over-the-counter. It's a huge jump when you come to this. Over-the-counter is kind of like a watered-down version to help those who have a little bit of hearing loss. And prescriptive are for all different kinds of hearing losses. And when we look at hearing loss, there's a large variety of type of loss you could have. It's pretty complex, pretty much, as far as what your hearing could be like. And your hearing could be different than her hearing, and vice versa. And your lifestyles can be different. And there's also this other fun thing. Sometimes your hearing might be similar, but your understanding of speech could be different. So when I make things louder, it might not be clear for her, but it is clear for him. So there's more involved than just what's the quietest sound you can hear. So when that becomes more complex and there's more need that you need for your hearing, then definitely prescriptive hearing aids is the way to go.
What role does an audiologist play with over-the-counter hearing products?
Well, first off, I want to say if you're thinking you have a hearing loss, if you're considering over-the-counter or any type of device, I highly recommend you see an audiologist first and get a full comprehensive hearing evaluation, just to make sure there's not something else going on, there's not a red flag, something that needs a medical referral. Also to make sure that this type of hearing aid, like an over-the-counter, is appropriate for your hearing loss. They may be cheaper than prescriptive, but if you buy them and they don't help you, that's a very expensive cost for something that's not going to be beneficial. So it's worth getting more information from the audiologist first. If you decide to go for over-the-counter device, the audiologist can assist you in putting it together, setting it up if you want. It is meant to be self-fitting, so they've made it so that you can purchase it off the shelf and fit it yourself. My graduate students and I, we put these together so we can get an idea of how it works, and it was pretty comical at first. I mean, you've got audiologists and graduate students together, and we still struggled a little bit. We had some problems. We had to call their customer service because we weren't getting it connected to the phone. There was lots of issues. But once we got it all put together, it was pretty smooth. It was nice, and their customer service was quite helpful. So you do have the customer service if you do this over. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to come to an audiologist, but if you would like the assistance, because the majority of the people who are dealing with technology would like some sort of assistance with them, not have to do it all by themselves. But they do have an app that you would download when you purchase these, and it gives you a step-by-step of how to set it up and what to do next.
Will the over-the-counter device connect to a phone?
That's a good question. These do. These have an app that you download and then you keep the app. And the app allows you to turn the volume up and down and make a little bit of a change to a sound. It's called sound balance. So you can switch it from bass to treble, like a really basic old computer or old speaker. You know how we had the different treble and basses that we could switch. So you could do a little bit of that on these. These you don't. You don't have that. This one is an app to set up, and then it just is whatever. You really don't need a lot of extra advanced features if your hearing is truly a mild, we call it flat hearing loss. So these would be beneficial to help you to be able to amplify things. When we miss sounds, we do something called, it's called listening effort. When you can't hear or understand something, your brain is pretty amazing and it tries to fill in what makes sense. And as you lose more and more hearing, so you don't have as much information, your brain has to work triply hard to try to fill in what makes sense and what they miss. And by the end of the day, you're exhausted. It's just exhausting. It's called listening effort. And so putting something on, if you have a little bit of a hearing loss, you have a little bit of hearing of that listening effort. So this would help reduce that and help with that.
How much will hearing aids cost?
It depends on the hearing aid. There's a wide range for the prescriptive hearing aids. They can be anywhere from $1,800 to $7,000 a pair. It depends on the clinic, it depends on the hearing aid, it depends on, a lot of times they do something called bundled, where the more expensive devices, they usually bundle all the other services in that price, so it tends to be higher. With the over-the-counter, they will be anywhere from $500 to about, probably I think the most I've seen is $1,500. For 2 of them. Depends. Again, you're working with technology, so looking at the reviews is very, very important. But also realizing when you pay a little bit more, you tend to get a little bit higher quality device. Like for instance, this, which is non-Bluetooth, is $1,000 for a pair. And this one with Bluetooth is $1,300 a pair. So it kind of gives you an idea. Do you want to pay $300 more to have the connectivity and the Bluetooth ability?
What should you know before choosing?
It's important. I still push to see an audiologist, have a full evaluation. They're qualified to help you to decide what would be best for you. But if you are noticing other things within your ears, like you had a sudden loss, or you have ringing in your ears, or just one ear, or there's a little bit more difficulty hearing in one ear than the other, pain, discharge, anything like that, you definitely want to see an audiologist or an ear, nose, and throat physician. That's not something you'd want to just go over the counter and buy something and put on your ears. You want to make sure there's not something else going on. But as far as knowing, if you have a little bit of difficulty, you can probably try an over-the-counter and see what it does for you. They do have limitations, but they still have quite a bit of power for how little they are, and there's a possibility that it could hurt if you didn't program it correctly. So I still think it's extremely important to see an audiologist first, because I've seen several people lately that I have recommend over-the-counter devices. They were good for their particular hearing configuration and their concerns that they had. There's also a lot of prescriptive devices that are not as high in technology that are very similar to the pricing that you could get, but you'd get the prescriptive bonuses on top of that as well. So it's good to get educated, because you know what, the minute you hit that 45, 50 year age, you get a slew of things in the mail and on your computer about these are the best hearing aids ever. They will make you hear everything. No noise will ever bother you again. They're really good at their advertising, but 90% of the time they're a lot of fluff, and you just have to be careful about, you don't want to go out and purchase something. Well, it's only $500. Yeah, but is it really helping you, or is it just, a device that you thought was really cheap? And so cheaper is not necessarily better. It's good to be educated, so that when you go make the decision, you can feel more confident about it and know it's the right thing for you.
Are over-the-counter hearing aids safe?
They have particular regulations. The FDA's put some regulations on them so that they are safe. When they first came up with the law in 2017, there was a lot of uproar in the audiology area, worried about what this would do to the market. And so they held off on the law, and they had many committees and groups where they discussed it and tried to come up with other ways that they can make it safer before it became ready to go in August of 2022 and official in October. But so there's a few things they've done. They've limited it so they can't put it in too deep, so it wouldn't push the eardrum or cause pain or discomfort. And they've limited how much sound it could go, how loud it can go. before it can push down, but it's still pretty loud. It can go up to 111 dBSBL, which is pretty loud still. So that's not as, it's a little higher than us audiologists really wanted, but it does limit it from where it was before. So if they didn't program it correctly, or if they didn't follow the instructions like they should, there's a possibility that it could hurt their hearing. So without any assistance from an audiologist, there might be some concerns, but they've been trying to put limiters on them and trying to protect. So hopefully that won't cause any hurt or pain. I think more of the end, if you were to purchase them thinking they were cheaper, but they weren't the right thing for you, I think they would just not help as much as they may possibly hurt in that sense. But in the long run hurt because they're not getting the help they need.
How can hearing loss affect your life?
Hearing typically, not always, but typically goes down slowly over time, just from use. If you expose yourself to noise, it's going to go a lot more quickly, but even in that sense, it does go down slowly. And as humans, what we do is when things happen, we just try to adjust and accommodate for that, and especially if it happens slowly. But if you start noticing that you are missing what people are saying, you misunderstand, you say the wrong thing when people are talking, or you say something they already said because you missed it, or if you are recognizing you're turning the TV up a little bit louder because you just quite can't understand that person, what they're saying, or oh, there's many different ways. If your family's mentioning that you're not noticing what's going on, or if you're missing, or you have to ask people to repeat themselves often, or you start to sit in the middle of a conversation and you recognize that you really don't know what's going on. If you're with your family at the table and there's just a lot of talking and you're just realizing, I don't know what's happening, I'm missing all this stuff. These are good signs that shows that you're probably needing a little bit extra help with your hearing and understanding, because you don't want to be avoiding social situations, avoiding connections. People actually tend to do that. They miss what their grandchildren are saying, so they just prefer not to go to the activity, or they'll just sit in the corner and lots of excitement's going on, and they're just there, but they're not really interacting with others. Or other people just refuse to go out. Why go out? Why go to church? I can't hear the speaker. I don't know what's going on. So they stop interacting, and then that causes other issues. When you don't have that social interaction and that connection, it increases your chance of other health issues as well. So that's another reason why hearing aids are important.
How can you ensure that your device will work well for you?
There are 4 things you need for a successful hearing aid experience. And one of them is a really good product. You need to have a good product. It's not necessarily going out and buying the cheapest product. You need to have a good, high quality product that's well programmed for your needs. You need to have a good, experienced audiologist that knows what they're doing, that can help you and assist you, because hearing aids are a lot more than just the product. They're a whole new change in your life. So there's a lot of counseling, there's a lot of fine-tuning and adjusting. That makes a huge difference on how successful they are. So a lot of counseling, realistic expectations. They're aids. They do amazing things, but they're aids. They're not your ears like they were when you were younger. So a lot of times people think, I'm spending this money, I want perfection. And I don't want to miss anything, I don't want to have any problems. It's like, well, they're aids. So they will aid you, and they will make it better than without. But there'll still be some limitations, so we discussed that. And you also need, your hearing loss affects really how well you do with hearing aids. Everybody's is different. I mentioned before, sometimes when you make things louder for people, it doesn't necessarily make it clear. So putting devices on like that won't help them, even if you have the best hearing aid out there. So then that's a person that we consider for a cochlear implant. And so that's another reason why I see an audiologist. All right, what was the last thing I was saying? Person, product, the person. That is the last and actually the most important thing of the 4 things for success. The person has to wear the hearing aids. That is the biggest thing. Hearing aids, again, they're not perfect. You got to get adjusted to having things in your ears. Sounds around you are going to be loud. Remember, the hearing's gone down slowly over time for the most part. And then hearing aids bring them back up almost instantly. And so you're like, wow, the toilet is loud. Oh my gosh, my car has all these squeaks. I had no idea. My feet, I can hear my feet walking. Now, all these sounds are there for everybody else, but we've heard them over and over again. So your brain does this cool thing about it doesn't focus on them because it's normal for you. Well, now you've got all these sounds coming back to you all at once. So typically people at first are having a hard time adjusting to them. They don't realize that that's normal, and they don't put forth the effort to wear them. And the brain will not adjust if something's not consistent. So the more you wear them, the more they become your new ears, the better you'll like them. and the better you'll do for them. They'll help you a lot better, and you'll enjoy them a lot better. Once you have those realistic expectations and that dedication to wearing them, they don't go in the drawer. So 9 times out of 10, if someone comes to me and says, I hate these, I'm not wearing them, the hearing aids actually keep track of how long you're wearing them. So they can't lie. And they actually keep track of the environments that they're in as well. So I can pull it up and say, oh, hey, you're wearing them 2 hours a day. So let's talk about this. Because we need you to wear them 10.5 hours a day. That's what the research shows. At least 10.5 hours a day to get the best benefit from the devices. The brain needs to know it's something consistent. For those sweet people that just put them in when they go to church on Sunday because they want to hear the speaker, and then they take them off and they don't wear them the rest of the week because I'm just sitting home and it's quiet, they will never like them. They'll go in the drawer just because your brain's not going to adjust and they don't become your new ears. It's just kind of a one-time thing. So yeah, hearing aids, definitely the dedication of the wearer is very important for success. Most people that come in and talk to me because they hear an ad online or see something on the TV that says, big news, hearing aids are now available to everyone at cheaper costs. And I think that's mainly what they notice. They said it's just cheaper. And so they're not recognizing that the laws for a particular type of hearing loss, not just for anybody. The main point of the law was to get people in earlier, so they will get fit earlier, so they will reduce health issues later on because of a hearing loss. Also, if you get fit earlier, you adjust to them faster than if you have more of a hearing loss. So win-win on both sides. But they were coming into us because they thought they were just cheaper and not necessarily recognizing, is this the right hearing aid for me or not? But I'm glad they came in because then I can talk to them and I can do a full hearing evaluation and I can tell them, yeah, this actually would be helpful for you. You can check them online. If you'd like us to help you, then we can make an appointment and we can assist you with it. We'd be more than happy to. But you know, this will be great for you. Or no, this is not going to be appropriate for you. You will not find benefit from wearing these devices. Let me show you some other things that might be beneficial instead.